It was supposed to be just one cold night, two friends sharing a blanket. But under the same blanket, something unexpected happened. A forbidden moment. A touch that turned into more. People call it fate, others call it temptation, but for me, that night changed everything. This isn't just a romantic story, it's about love, desire, and the one kiss that shattered all boundaries. It was supposed to be just one cold night, two friends sharing a blanket. But under the same blanket, something unexpected happened. A forbidden moment. A touch that turned into more. People call it fate, others call it temptation, but for me, that night changed everything. This isn't just a romantic story, it's about love, desire, and the one kiss that shattered all boundaries. The night began innocently enough. The storm outside had been raging for hours, lashing the small wooden cabin with icy rain and thunder that rattled the windows. We were supposed to be camping in the mountains, far away from the city's noise, but the weather had betrayed us. Our tents were soaked, our sleeping bags damp, and the only safe refuge we found was this lonely cabin with creaking walls and a faint smell of old pine. Inside, the fire we struggled to light flickered weakly, casting long shadows across the room. My best friend, sat cross-legged beside me on the floor, rubbing his hands together for warmth. His name was Aiden, and for years we had shared everything, classes, secrets, even the same silly dreams about escaping our small town someday. But that night, the distance between us felt sharper, heavier, like the storm outside had trapped more than just our bodies. The temperature dropped quickly. I could see my own breath curl into mist. My jacket was soaked through, clinging to me uncomfortably, and Aiden's hoodie wasn't faring much better. We laid our wet clothes near the fire, sitting awkwardly in just our thin undershirts, trying to ignore the closeness, the silence, the way the world outside had disappeared, leaving just us. "Blanket's all we've got," Aiden finally muttered, pulling the thick wool cover from his backpack. He shook it out, and dust swirled in the air. It was barely big enough for one person, let alone two. He shot me a half-smile, the kind he used when he was pretending not to care. "We either share or freeze." I laughed nervously, though my chest tightened. "Guess we don't have much choice." We sat shoulder to shoulder, the blanket draped clumsily over both of us. At first, it felt strange, like stepping into a line I had never dared to cross. Our arms brushed, our knees touched, and every accidental movement made the air between us shift. The fire crackled softly, the storm hammered the roof, but my attention was fixed on him, the warmth of his body, the rise and fall of his breath, the way his damp hair clung messily to his forehead. I told myself it was nothing. That it had always been like this. After all, we'd grown up side by side, playing soccer in the schoolyard, staying up late cramming for exams, even sneaking out of our houses to lie on the hood of his old car and watch the stars. We had been close for as long as I could remember. But closeness has its limits. Or so I thought. The minutes dragged on. My body trembled from the cold, and instinctively, I leaned into him. He didn't pull away. Instead, he adjusted the blanket so it wrapped tighter around us, his arm brushing mine again, this time slower, deliberate. "You're freezing," he said softly. His voice was quiet, but in that silence it thundered in my ears. I nodded, not trusting my own words. My throat was too dry, my heart beating too loudly. The storm outside was violent, but the storm inside me was worse. I wondered if he could feel it, the way my chest rose faster, the way my hand twitched as if wanting to reach for his. We sat like that for what felt like forever. The fire dimmed, the storm refused to ease, and the night stretched endlessly ahead. My mind was a mess of forbidden thoughts, ones I had buried for years. I had always told myself that what I felt for him was just friendship, strong, deep, unshakable friendship. But friendship didn't explain the way my gaze lingered on his lips when he wasn't looking. Friendship didn't explain why my heart burned whenever he smiled at someone else. Under the same blanket, there was no escape. Every brush of his hand against mine sent a jolt through me. Every shift of his body brought him closer. My chest ached with a secret I could no longer contain. I closed my eyes, telling myself to breathe, to think of something else, anything else. But then his voice broke the silence again. "Do you ever think about us?" The question hung heavy in the air. My eyes snapped open, meeting his gaze. His face was unreadable, his eyes dark and serious. "Us?" I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded slowly. "I mean, more than friends. More than what we've always been." My heart stopped. The words I had imagined 1,000 times, dreamed of but never dared to speak, now spilled from his lips. It felt unreal, like I had conjured them in my desperation. My voice cracked. I swallowed hard, unsure whether to deny it or confess. "Why are you asking me that?" He hesitated, looking down at his hands. "Because I feel something tonight. And I don't know if it's just the storm, the cold, or if it's been here all along." The blanket was suddenly too heavy, the air too thick. I wanted to run, to hide, to say anything that would break the tension. But I couldn't. Because I felt it too. I had always felt it. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Instead, the silence stretched again, louder than thunder, sharper than lightning. Aiden turned his head, his eyes locking with mine. For a second, everything else disappeared, the storm, the fire, the world itself. There was just us, under the same blanket, with a truth neither of us could escape anymore. And that was only the beginning? The question hung between us like smoke, thick and suffocating. Do you ever think about us? I wanted to answer, but my lips refused to move. My heart was pounding so loudly I was sure he could hear it beneath the storm's roar. Aiden's gaze didn't waver. He was waiting. He had opened a door, one I had never dared touch, and now it stood wide, daring me to step through. My throat burned with unspoken words. Yes, I've thought about us. 1,000 times. Every time you laughed at one of my stupid jokes, every time you fell asleep on my shoulder, every time your hand brushed mine by accident. I've thought about us more than I should, more than I've ever admitted, not even to myself. But what if I said it out loud? What if the fragile line of friendship snapped, leaving us broken? I forced a laugh, but it cracked in the middle. You're asking weird questions, man. Must be the cold messing with your head. Aiden's lips pressed into a thin line. His eyes searched mine, as if trying to peel away the layers I hid behind. Then, he smirked faintly, though his voice betrayed something deeper. Yeah. Maybe. He leaned back against the wall, the fire's dim glow highlighting the sharp angles of his face. For a few moments, neither of us spoke. The storm outside rattled the window, but inside, silence had its own thunder. I wrapped the blanket tighter around myself, pretending it was just for warmth. In truth, it was a shield. I could feel his body beside mine, the warmth radiating, the temptation gnawing. I wanted to reach for his hand. I wanted to lean into him. But I stayed frozen, afraid of what might happen if I did. Finally, he broke the silence again. You've never wondered? Not even once. I stared at the fire, avoiding his eyes. We're friends, Aiden. Best friends. That's all. The words hurt coming out, because they weren't true. Not entirely. He knew it too. I saw it in the way his jaw tightened, the way he looked away as if my answer cut deeper than I intended. Right, he muttered. Just friends. The blanket shifted as he pulled it tighter around his shoulders. A small gap opened between us, and cold air rushed in. I almost panicked. For all my denial, the distance felt worse than the closeness. I turned to him quickly. I didn't mean. He looked back, his eyes glinting in the dim light. Then what did you mean? I froze again. My chest rose and fell too fast, my words trapped in my throat. How could I admit it? That I thought about him at night, that I imagined what it would feel like to kiss him, that this wasn't just friendship anymore. I don't know, I whispered finally. Aiden studied me for a long moment. Then he sighed, shaking his head. Forget, I asked. But I couldn't forget. Not anymore. His question had lit a fire inside me that no storm could put out. We sat in silence, both of us pretending to focus on the flames. But the air was charged, electric, like something was waiting to happen. Every time his shoulder brushed mine, every time his breath tickled my cheek, I felt the invisible pull dragging us closer. Hours passed, or maybe just minutes, I couldn't tell. The storm kept howling, the fire burned low, and the night felt endless. At some point, exhaustion began to sink in. My eyes grew heavy, my head nodding forward despite the turmoil inside me. That's when it happened. Half asleep, my head slipped sideways, and landed against Aiden's shoulder. I startled awake immediately, about to pull back, but his hand gently pressed against the blanket, holding me there. It's fine, he murmured. Just rest. I froze, every nerve alive. His shoulder was firm, warm, steady. My cheek burned where it touched him. The storm faded into the background, and all I could hear was his heartbeat, fast, uneven, matching mine. I wanted to stay like that forever. But the weight of what it meant pressed down on me. I shifted, whispering, Aiden. Shoo, he said softly, almost like a plea. Don't ruin it. Those words cut deeper than any confession could. Because they meant he felt it too. I closed my eyes again, letting myself breathe in his scent, the mix of rain and smoke and something uniquely him. I thought of all the times I'd wanted this without admitting it. All the nights I lay awake wondering if I was the only one. And now, here we were, under the same blanket, teetering on the edge of something dangerous and beautiful. Sleep came in fragments, broken by restless thoughts and the constant storm. I drifted in and out, every time waking to the same reality, my head on his shoulder, his warmth pressed against me, the blanket cocooning us together. At one point, I woke to find his head resting lightly against mine. Our hair tangled, our breath sinking. It felt natural, inevitable, like this was always how it was meant to be. But with the sunrise would come reality. The storm wouldn't last forever. And when it ended, what would we be? Friends who pretended this night never happened, or something more? The question gnawed at me as I finally slipped into deeper sleep. But even in dreams, I felt his presence beside me, steady and close, and I knew the story of us had only just begun. When I opened my eyes, the storm was gone. For a moment, I thought it had all been a dream, the fire, the blanket, Aiden's question echoing in the dark. But then I felt it, the weight of his arm draped across me, the steady warmth of his chest against my back. I froze. Morning light filtered through the dusty cabin windows, soft and golden, painting everything in a fragile calm. The storm had left the world hushed, broken branches scattered outside, puddles glistening like shards of glass. Inside, though, it was his heartbeat I heard first. Slow, deep, steady. I didn't dare move. My face was inches from his arm, my hand tangled loosely with his beneath the blanket. At some point during the night, our bodies had found each other, not just shoulder to shoulder anymore, but entwined. His legs brushed mine, his breath stirred the back of my neck, and the blanket cocooned us like a secret. Panic and longing collided in my chest. Part of me wanted to slip out of his hold, pretend nothing had happened. Another part wanted to stay forever, to memorize the weight of him, to believe for one fragile morning that we belonged here, like this. Carefully, I shifted, craning my neck just enough to see his face. He was still asleep, his features softened in the light. Without the smirk, without the guarded eyes, he looked younger, like the boy I'd grown up with, the boy who had been my whole world before I even knew it. My chest tightened. His lips parted slightly as he breathed. And for the first time in years, I let myself imagine what it would feel like to close the space, to taste the answer I had been running from. My heart hammered at the thought. But I didn't. I couldn't. Because when he woke, what then? Would he pull away, laugh it off, shatter the fragile balance we had? Would he regret the question he asked last night, pretend it had never slipped out? I sighed softly, trying to steady myself. That's when his eyes opened. Blue-gray, still heavy with sleep, but focused straight on me. He didn't flinch, didn't move his arm away. Instead, he whispered, "You're still here." I swallowed hard. Where else would I go? He smiled faintly, a sleepy curve of his lips that made my chest ache. Good. For a moment, silence lingered. Neither of us pulled back. His arm stayed draped across me, our faces close enough that I could see the flecks of color in his irises. It was too much, too intimate. I sat up abruptly, breaking the spell. We should get moving. Check the trail, see if it's clear. Aiden blinked, his expression unreadable now. Slowly, he pushed himself up too, running a hand through his messy hair. Right. The trail. The blanket slipped off us, leaving behind the faint warmth we'd shared. I felt exposed, shivering though the air was no longer cold. I busied myself with gathering our things, avoiding his eyes. We packed in silence, but it wasn't the easy silence we'd always known. It was heavier, awkward, filled with the weight of unsaid words. Every time our hands brushed reaching for gear, my chest tightened. Every glance I caught from him was too sharp, too knowing. When we finally stepped outside, the mountain air was crisp, washed clean by the storm. The world glittered with dew, the trees dripping quietly, the path ahead muddy but passable. It should have felt like relief, like freedom after the long night. Instead, it felt like the world had shifted, fragile beneath my feet. We walked side by side, boots squelching in the mud. The silence stretched until I couldn't bear it anymore. About last night, I started, my voice catching. Aiden's gaze flicked to me, then back to the trail. What about it? I hesitated. I don't know. The blanket, the question you asked. It was a lot. He smirked, though it didn't reach his eyes. You mean me asking if you've ever thought about us? The words alone made my stomach twist. I nodded weakly. Forget it, he said after a pause. I shouldn't have asked. Something in me snapped. But you did ask. That stopped him. He turned, eyes narrowing. So what? You want the truth? I've thought about it. I've thought about you. More than I should. And if that ruins everything, then fine. At least I said it. The confession hung in the air like lightning, sparking against my skin. My mouth went dry. I had wanted those words for so long, but hearing them out loud terrified me. Aiden, I whispered, but nothing more came. He laughed bitterly, shaking his head. Forget it. Just forget I said anything. Let's just get home. He started walking again, faster this time. I followed, my chest heavy with the truth I was too afraid to speak. Because the truth was simple, I felt the same. I always had. But saying it meant risking everything. And I wasn't ready. Not yet. The trail stretched on, winding through wet trees and slippery rocks. The sun rose higher, drying our clothes, but the chill inside me remained. We didn't speak again until the cabin disappeared behind us, swallowed by the forest. Even then, I could still feel it, the memory of his arm around me, the warmth under the same blanket, the question that had changed everything. And I knew, deep down, that no matter how far we walked, we couldn't outrun it. This was only the beginning. By the time we made it back to town, the sun was already slipping toward the horizon. The streets were still damp from the storm, the air heavy with the scent of rain-soaked asphalt. Everything looked the same as it always had, quiet, small, familiar. But nothing felt the same anymore. I kept stealing glances at Aiden as we walked side by side, but he didn't look at me. His eyes stayed fixed ahead, his hands buried deep in his jacket pockets. He looked like he was carrying the whole storm with him, even though the skies had cleared. We reached his car, parked crookedly by the trailhead where we'd left it 2 days earlier. Neither of us spoke as we loaded our gear into the trunk. The silence was heavier now, filled with all the words we weren't saying. I wanted to tell him I felt it too, that his question, his confession, hadn't been one-sided. That I had thought about us more times than I could count. But every time I opened my mouth, fear shut me down. Fear of ruining the only friendship that mattered. Fear of what people would say if they ever found out. Fear of admitting something I had buried for so long. The car ride was worse. The hum of the engine filled the space between us, broken only by the faint hiss of tires on wet roads. Aiden kept his eyes on the road, his jaw clenched. I stared out the window, watching raindrops race each other down the glass, wishing I could rewind time to before the storm. But I couldn't. The line had already been crossed. Halfway back, he finally spoke. "You don't have to say anything." His voice was low, steady, but there was an edge to it. "About last night. About what I said. Just forget it." The words cut deep, sharper than he probably intended. I turned toward him. "How am I supposed to forget it?" He gripped the steering wheel tighter. "Because you don't feel the same. And I'm not gonna sit here waiting for you to pretend you do." I opened my mouth, then closed it again. He was wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to say the truth. Not yet. My throat burned with it, but the fear was stronger. So I let the silence return, hating myself for it. When he finally dropped me off at my house, he didn't wait for me to say goodbye. He just muttered, "See you," and drove off before I even reached the door. The days that followed were unbearable. We saw each other, of course, we always did. School, practice, hanging out with friends. On the surface, nothing had changed. We still joked around, still acted like the inseparable pair everyone knew us to be. But underneath, everything was different. Every glance felt weighted. Every laugh felt forced. And every time our hands brushed by accident, I felt a jolt that sent me spiraling back to that night, to his arm around me under the blanket, to his whispered words. I tried to bury it, to pretend I was fine. But Aiden wasn't pretending. He was distant, guarded, like he had built a wall overnight. He stopped calling me late at night like he used to. He stopped waiting for me after class. He even started hanging out more with other guys from the team, leaving me on the sidelines, watching from a distance. And it hurt. More than I wanted to admit. One Friday evening, about a week after the storm, I found myself at a bonfire party by the lake. It was the usual scene, music blasting from someone's truck, people laughing, cheap beer passed around. I hadn't even wanted to go, but my friends had dragged me along. And of course, Aiden was there. He was leaning against his car, laughing with a group of guys. The firelight flickered across his face, warm and golden, making him look untouchable. When our eyes met across the crowd, something flickered in his expression, something I couldn't name. But then he looked away, as if I wasn't even there. I felt a twist in my chest. I grabbed a drink I didn't want, just to have something in my hand, and wandered closer to the fire. That's when I noticed her, Maya, one of the girls from our class, standing way too close to him. She touched his arm when she laughed, and he didn't move away. My stomach sank as I watched him lean in, saying something that made her blush. Jealousy hit me like a punch. Ugly, raw, undeniable. I turned away, staring into the flames, trying to swallow it down. But then I heard his voice behind me, low and teasing. "Careful, Maya. People might think you actually like me." Her laugh rang out, sweet and sharp. And something inside me cracked. Later that night, after most of the crowd had thinned, I found Aiden by the water's edge, skipping rocks across the dark surface of the lake. I hesitated, my fists clenched, before finally walking over. "You've been avoiding me," I said flatly. He didn't look up. "Not avoiding. Just giving you space." "Space?" I laughed bitterly. "That what you call flirting with Maya all night?" That got his attention. He turned, eyes narrowing. "Why do you care?" The question hit me hard. Why did I care? Because he was my best friend? Because I was jealous? Because I wanted him to look at me the way he had looked at her? I stepped closer, my voice sharper than I intended. Because you don't even like her. You're just trying to prove a point. His jaw tightened. And what point would that be? That you don't need me, I whispered. The words hung in the night air, more honest than anything I'd said in weeks. Aiden's eyes softened for just a second, but then he shook his head. You're the one who pushed me away. Don't act like this is on me. My chest ached. I didn't. Yes, you did, he cut in, his voice rising. You couldn't even admit how you felt. Or maybe you don't feel anything at all. Maybe I'm the idiot for thinking there was something there. His words sliced through me. I opened my mouth, but no defense came. Because he was right, at least partly. I had felt everything, but I hadn't been brave enough to say it. So instead, I stood there in silence, staring at the boy who had been my whole world, realizing I was losing him. And for the first time, I wasn't sure I could stop it. The days after the bonfire felt heavier than the storm we had survived. At school, Aiden and I still moved in the same circles, same classes, same lunch table, same soccer practice. But now, there was an invisible wall between us, a silence that even our friends noticed. The easy rhythm we'd had for years was gone, replaced by clipped answers, sidelong glances, and an unspoken distance that only I seemed desperate to close. The problem was, people talk. When two best friends suddenly stop being inseparable, rumors spread faster than wildfire. By Tuesday, whispers followed us down the halls. Did they fight? Did something happen at the cabin? A few people even joked about it, throwing sly comments like, maybe you two got too cozy under that blanket. I laughed it off, pretended it didn't matter. But inside, I burned with panic. What if people guessed the truth? What if they saw what I'd been too afraid to say out loud? Aiden, though, didn't flinch. He brushed it off with his usual smirk, sometimes even playing along with the teasing. But I could tell, his smile never reached his eyes anymore. At soccer practice, the tension boiled over. Coach had us running drills in the late afternoon sun. Sweat soaked through my shirt, my lungs burned, but all I could focus on was Aiden across the field. He wasn't himself. Normally, he played with this easy confidence, joking between sprints, calling out encouragement. Today, he was sharp, aggressive, pushing harder than everyone else, as if trying to outrun something. During a scrimmage, we collided going for the same ball. I hit the ground hard, the air whooshing from my lungs. Aiden barely glanced at me before kicking the ball away. What the hell, man? I shouted, scrambling to my feet. He shrugged, not meeting my eyes. Play harder. Something in me snapped. Or maybe stop playing like you've got a death wish. The field went quiet. Teammates exchanged looks, sensing the tension but saying nothing. Coach blew his whistle, barking at us to focus, but the damage was done. After practice, I caught up to him in the locker room. What's your problem? He slammed his locker shut. My problem? You. I blinked. Me? Yeah, you. He stepped closer, his voice low and sharp. You can't even look me in the eye anymore. You act like nothing happened, like I didn't say what I said. And then you get pissed when I try to move on. My fists clenched at my sides. Move on? Is that what Maya is? Moving on? He laughed bitterly. At least she knows what she wants. At least she doesn't hide behind silence. The words hit harder than any tackle. My chest ached, but I couldn't let him see it. You think this is easy for me? I shot back. You think I don't? I stopped myself. The truth clawed at my throat, but fear sealed it shut. Aiden shook his head, his jaw tight. Forget it. You'll never say it. And I'm done waiting. He grabbed his bag and stormed out, leaving me standing alone in the empty locker room, my unsaid words echoing louder than anything I could have shouted. The next few days blurred together. He stopped texting me altogether. At lunch, he sat with a different group. At practice, he avoided me like I was invisible. And then came Friday night. I wasn't planning to go to the game after party, but one of my friends dragged me along. The house was packed, music shaking the walls, the smell of cheap beer everywhere. I wandered through the crowd, trying not to think about him, but of course, he was the first person I saw. Aiden was in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, a red cup in hand. And beside him, Maya again. Too close. Laughing at something he said, her hand brushing his arm. My stomach dropped. I tried to ignore it, tried to lose myself in the crowd. But everywhere I turned, there they were. Him laughing. Her leaning closer. His arm sliding around her waist. Something inside me cracked. I pushed through the crowd until I reached them. Can I talk to you? I said, my voice sharp, directed at Aiden. He looked at me coolly, his smirk practiced. Kind of busy here. Maya glanced between us, sensing the tension. It's fine, I'll catch you later, she said quickly, slipping away. As soon as she was gone, I grabbed his arm. What are you doing? What does it look like? He shot back. I'm trying to forget you. His words stung like fire. By pretending you like her? You're lying to yourself, Aiden. He stepped closer, his eyes burning into mine. And you're lying to me. You want me to stop? Then say it. Say you feel the same. Just once. That's all it would take. The room spun around me. People laughed and shouted, the party roaring on, but all I could hear was him. All I could feel was the weight of the moment pressing down on me. I opened my mouth. My heart screamed yes. But the word never came. Instead, I looked away. Aiden exhaled sharply, shaking his head. That's what I thought. He shoved past me, disappearing into the crowd, leaving me rooted to the spot, my chest hollow. I stumbled outside, the cool night air biting at my skin. My hands trembled as I leaned against the porch railing, trying to breathe. I had lost him. Not because I didn't feel the same, but because I couldn't say it. And as I stood there under the dark sky, listening to the muffled thump of music behind me, I realized the truth I had been running from. Silence could destroy us faster than any storm ever could. The weekend after the party stretched like an endless gray sky. I didn't hear from Aiden. No texts. No calls. Not even the lazy memes he used to send me at 2 a.m. when he couldn't sleep. His absence echoed in every part of my day, a silence so loud it drowned out everything else. By Monday, I half expected things to snap back into place, like they always had after our fights. But when I walked into school, his seat beside mine in homeroom was empty. For the first time in years, I had no idea where he was. Rumors filled the gap. Maybe he's sick. Maybe he's skipping. Maybe he's done with you. By lunch, I finally saw him. He was across the cafeteria, laughing at something one of his teammates said, Maya at his side. I froze, tray in hand, my chest aching. He didn't even glance my way. I sat down at another table, pretending it didn't matter. Pretending I wasn't watching him the whole time, waiting for some sign, any sign, that the bond we had wasn't gone forever. But he never looked up. That night, I couldn't take it anymore. I threw on a hoodie and biked across town to his house. The windows were dark except for the faint glow of his bedroom light. I stood on the curb for a long time, gripping the handlebars, debating whether I had the courage to knock. Before I could, the curtain shifted. He was there, silhouetted against the lamp, his head bent over something. I thought about throwing a rock, about calling his name, about doing anything but standing there frozen. But I didn't. Instead, I turned around and pedaled home, the weight in my chest heavier than the night air. The distance between us didn't just hurt, it changed me. I was quieter in class, distracted at practice. My friends asked if I was okay, I lied and said I was just tired. But inside, I was unraveling. Everywhere I went, I felt him. The space beside me in the locker room. The empty seat next to me in the cafeteria. The echo of his laugh in the hall. And worse, the memory of his voice at the party, sharp and cutting, say it. Just once. That's all it would take. But I hadn't. And now, maybe it was too late. The breaking point came on Friday night. We had an away game, the kind that filled the bleachers with parents and students. I sat on the bus, headphones in, pretending to scroll my phone. Aiden sat 3 rows ahead, his head resting against the window, Maya leaning close to whisper something that made him smile. The sight twisted in my stomach. During the game, we played like strangers. On the field, timing is everything, knowing your teammates' next move before they make it. Aiden and I had always been flawless at that. But now, passes went wide. Signals got ignored. We tripped over each other like we'd never played together before. By halftime, coach was livid. "What's going on between you two?" he barked. Neither of us answered. In the second half, the other team scored. Then scored again. Our teammates glared at us, frustrated. When the final whistle blew, we'd lost by 3 goals. On the bus ride home, the silence was suffocating. Everyone blamed us, even if they didn't say it out loud. And maybe they were right. When we got back to school, I caught him in the parking lot. "Aiden, wait," I said, grabbing his arm. He stopped, but his expression was ice. "What? We can't keep doing this," I said, my voice shaking. "We're tearing everything apart, our team, our friendship." "Our friendship?" he cut in, his laugh bitter. "Don't kid yourself. Whatever we had, you destroyed it the second you stayed silent." His words sliced deep, but I pushed back. "You don't understand. It's not that I don't feel it, I do, Aiden. I just..." "Then say it," he snapped, stepping closer. His eyes blazed, daring me. "Say it out loud. Right here. Right now. No games, no hiding." The parking lot was empty except for us, the night air cold against my skin. My heart pounded so loud I was sure he could hear it. The word trembled on my tongue, fragile, dangerous. But fear clamped down, the old terror of being seen, of being labeled, of losing everything beyond him. "I can't," I whispered. His face hardened. He pulled his arm from my grip like my touch burned him. "Then we're done." He walked away, the sound of his footsteps fading into the dark. And this time, I knew he meant it. The next week was unbearable. He stopped showing up at my house. He stopped walking home with me. At school, he was always with Maya, their closeness growing like a blade twisting deeper into my chest. Every smile he gave her felt like a piece of him I'd lost forever. And yet, at night, when I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I thought about that storm. That blanket. That almost kiss. The way his eyes had searched mine like I was the only thing in the world that mattered. I thought about what it felt like to be wanted, really wanted, by the one person I wanted most. And I realized something terrifying. If I didn't find the courage to speak, I would lose him for good. But by then, it might already be too late. The days after Aiden cut me off felt like living in a world without color. School moved on as if nothing had happened, but for me, every moment was shadowed. I still saw him, at practice, in the halls, across classrooms, but it was like looking at a stranger who wore my best friend's face. He never met my eyes. Not once. And Maya? Maya was everywhere. Walking with him. Laughing with him. Sitting in his car after school. Their closeness was no longer rumor, it was real, and it sliced at me with every passing day. Still, beneath the ache, I held onto one fragile thread of hope, that maybe, just maybe, he hadn't fully closed the door. That maybe some part of him was waiting. But hope was a dangerous thing. The turning point came on a Thursday. It was a normal afternoon, the sky streaked pink and gold as the last light of day filtered through the windows of the locker room. Practice had ended early, and most of the team had already cleared out. I lingered, tying and untying my shoelaces, stalling because I knew Aiden was still there. When I finally stood, he was by his locker, pulling on a hoodie. For a moment, the urge to speak, to just say his name, rose like a wave. But before I could, his phone buzzed. He answered, his voice low. "Yeah, I'm on my way." "No, it's fine. I'll pick you up." Maya's name lit up the screen when he hung up. Something inside me cracked. "You're really with her now," I said before I could stop myself. He froze, then turned slowly. His eyes were guarded, his jaw tight. "What do you care?" I swallowed hard. "Because I know you don't feel anything for her." "Not really." His laugh was sharp, humorless. "Funny. You know everything about me except the truth." "I do know the truth." I snapped, my voice echoing against the metal lockers. "You want me to say it, but I'm scared, okay? I'm scared of what it means, of what happens if I admit it." "Then maybe you don't deserve it," he cut in, his voice trembling with anger, or maybe pain. The words hit like a punch. Before I could respond, he slammed his locker shut and walked out, leaving me with nothing but the hollow sound of the door swinging closed. That night, the storm came back. Not the literal one, no rain, no thunder. Just the storm inside me, raging harder than ever. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't breathe. Every memory replayed on loop, the cabin, the blanket, the way he'd looked at me like I was everything. And the way I'd thrown it away with silence. By midnight, I was pacing my room, my phone clutched in my hand. I opened our old chat, dozens of messages from before, all the dumb jokes and late-night confessions that had once been our lifeline. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, ready to type. But what? What could I say now that I hadn't already ruined? I shut the phone off and buried my face in my pillow, hating myself for every word I hadn't spoken. The next day, fate forced my hand. It was during the pep rally. The gym was packed, banners waving, music blaring. The team was supposed to be celebrated on stage despite our losing streak, and I stood there with the others, plastering on a fake smile. When the spotlight swept across the bleachers, I caught sight of him. Aiden, sitting with Maya. She leaned in, whispering in his ear, her hand resting on his knee. My chest tightened until I thought I might shatter. But then, our eyes met. Just for a second. One fleeting, electric second. And in that second, the world fell away. I saw the same storm I'd seen that night under the blanket. The same longing. The same fear. And I knew, without doubt, that no matter how far we drifted, it wasn't gone. Not yet. The realization was terrifying. And freeing. Because it meant I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't crazy. We were real. I just had to be brave enough to claim it. That evening, I made a choice. I skipped dinner, skipped homework, skipped everything. I grabbed my bike and pedaled straight to his house, my heart pounding with every turn of the wheels. When I got there, I almost faltered. His car was in the driveway. The lights were on. For a moment, I stood frozen on the sidewalk, every doubt screaming at me, what if he slams the door in your face? What if he's with her? What if you're already too late? But then I thought about the way his eyes had locked with mine in the gym. And I knew I had to try. I marched up to the door and knocked, my fist trembling. There was a pause, footsteps, and then the door swung open. Aiden stood there, hoodie hanging loose, hair messy. His eyes widened when he saw me. For a heartbeat, neither of us spoke. Then he said, flatly, "What are you doing here?" I took a deep breath, my chest tight but my voice steady. I can't keep running from this. From you. I need to say it. His expression flickered, hope, anger, hurt, all flashing across his face before he masked it with coldness. You're too late. No, I said firmly, shaking my head. I was too scared before. But I'm not anymore. For the first time, I saw him falter. And in that moment, standing on his porch, the night air sharp and cold around us, I knew, the storm had reached its peak. What came next would either save us, or destroy us forever. Aiden didn't move from the doorway. His hand gripped the edge of the doorframe so tightly his knuckles were white, like he was holding himself back. You can't just show up here after weeks of silence, he said, his voice sharp but shaking at the edges. You don't get to do that. I swallowed, the words clawing up my throat. I know. I've been a coward. I should have said it that night under the blanket, I should have said it at practice, at the party, 100 times over. But I didn't. And I hate myself for it. His eyes flickered, but he didn't let go of the anger. So why now? Why suddenly decide to grow a spine? Because I saw you today, I said, my voice trembling but sure. In the gym. Just for a second. And I realized, it's not gone. You feel it too, don't you? You can lie to me, you can run to Maya, but you can't tell me you don't still feel it. His chest rose and fell, quick and uneven. You don't know what I feel. Yes, I do, I whispered. Because I feel it too. I've felt it since that storm. Since the way you looked at me when we were under that blanket. Since the way your voice broke when you asked me to just say it. Silence hung between us, heavy, charged. Finally, he shook his head, laughing bitterly. You had your chance. Over and over, you had your chance. And every time, you chose fear. I stepped forward, my voice cracking. And now I'm choosing you. His eyes locked on mine then, the storm in them raw and unguarded. For a heartbeat, I thought he might slam the door. But instead, he stepped back, opening it wider. Come inside, he said quietly. His room was exactly as I remembered, messy bed, posters peeling slightly at the edges, the faint scent of his cologne in the air. It felt achingly familiar, like stepping back into a place I'd been shut out of for too long. He dropped onto the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. I stood awkwardly by the door until he finally said, So, say it. My heart thundered. This was it. The moment I'd run from again and again. I like you, I began, my voice trembling. No, that's not enough. I don't just like you, Aiden. I've been in love with you for a long time. I was too scared to admit it, because I didn't know what it would mean, what people would think, if I'd lose everything. But the truth is, none of it matters if it means losing you. The words hung in the air, naked and fragile. Aiden finally lifted his gaze, and for the first time in weeks, there were tears in his eyes. Do you have any idea how long I've wanted to hear that? My chest ached. I'm sorry it took me this long. He stood, closing the distance between us. You broke me, you know. Every time you stayed quiet, every time you turned away, it felt like you were ripping out pieces of me. I swallowed hard, tears burning my own eyes. I know. And I'll spend however long it takes proving I won't do it again. For a moment, we just stood there, inches apart, the air thick with everything we hadn't said. Then he whispered, under that blanket? I wanted to kiss you. More than anything. So did I breathed. This time, there was no hesitation. He leaned in, and when our lips met, it wasn't soft or tentative. It was desperate, hungry, a release of weeks of silence and longing. His hands gripped my shirt like he was afraid I'd vanish. Mine tangled in his hair, pulling him closer, like I could fuse us together. It was everything, the kiss we'd both been waiting for, the kiss that made the storm worth surviving. When we finally pulled apart, gasping for air, he rested his forehead against mine. You have no idea how badly I needed that. I laughed shakily, tears sliding down my cheeks. I think I do. But reality pressed in quickly. What about Maya? I asked softly, guilt tugging at me. His expression faltered. She doesn't deserve to be part of this mess. I thought if I forced myself to move on, maybe I could forget what I felt for you. But it didn't work. It could never work. I nodded slowly. You'll have to tell her. I will, he said firmly. She deserves honesty. More honesty than you and I gave each other. The word stung, but he was right. We sat together on his bed, shoulders touching, the silence no longer heavy but gentle, like a calm after the storm. I'm still scared, I admitted. Of people finding out. Of what comes next. He squeezed my hand. Me too. But if we're scared, at least we'll be scared together. Something warm bloomed in my chest at those words. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I felt like I could breathe again. We talked for hours, about the cabin, about the pain of the past weeks, about what we wanted going forward. There were still so many questions, so many uncertainties. But one thing was finally, undeniably clear. We had chosen each other. As the clock crept past midnight, I knew I had to leave before his parents woke. I stood reluctantly, but he caught my wrist, pulling me back for one last kiss. "Don't disappear on me again," he whispered. "I won't," I promised. When I biked home that night, the world looked different. The stars seemed brighter, the air lighter. Because for the first time, I wasn't carrying the weight of silence anymore. I had spoken the truth. And the truth had given me him. The following week felt like a new beginning. It wasn't like everything magically became easy. Whispers still floated through the halls, and Maya's hurt lingered in the air after Aiden gently told her the truth. But for once, I wasn't hiding. For once, I wasn't running from myself. Aiden and I didn't announce anything. We didn't need to. The way we walked side by side again, the way our laughter returned, the way our shoulders brushed in the cafeteria, it was enough. It was ours. At night, when we sat in his room, sharing earbuds and talking about everything and nothing, I sometimes caught him looking at me the same way he had that night under the storm. Only now, I didn't look away. Fear still existed, yes. But it no longer controlled me. Because I had learned something through all the silence, all the aching distance, love can survive storms, but only if you let it speak. And I finally had. One night, weeks later, as we lay side by side again, no storm this time, just the quiet hum of summer air, he whispered, "You know, under that blanket, that was the start of us." I smiled, turning toward him, our fingers entwining. "Yeah. And this is everything after." For the first time, I believed it. The storm had passed. What remained was ours to build, together. If this story touched your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Hit the like button, share it with someone who believes in love, and subscribe for more stories that dive deep into the moments we're often too scared to say out loud. Comment below, have you ever had a moment where silence almost cost you everything? Let's talk about it. Your story might help someone else find the courage to speak their truth.